Okay, so I'd like to welcome Jason Press, who's affectionately known in our Living Miracles community as JP. He's agreed to join with me today, and we're going to just look at, just ask JP some questions about his life and his journey. So thanks so much for joining us today, JP.
Oh, thank you, Colin. Thanks for having me.
Mm. Kind of feel like starting off with just asking you about, like, say, what would you say, what was it that led you, if you like, to kind of first make the turn towards, a spiritual life or towards God, if you like? Just anything that comes up for you around that idea.
Hmm.
Mm.
Well, it was certainly a combination of things. Or that's what it seemed to be, a combination of things. But um, I seem to remember a lot of experiences in college, actually, um, which was a time for me of kind of opening my mind to what I wanted my life to be about and what I wanted to do, and really not coming up with any satisfactory answers that really felt right, quite right. And so it was actually a time of a lot of maybe disillusionment, depression
Mm.
too, because and confusion. But I do remember starting just to hear bits and pieces about spirituality and meditation, I guess psychology as a little bit of a gateway. Those kind of things interested me, and would sometimes just kind of naturally fall into deep conversations with friends. Um, and and actually, I would say from some of the times of depression, that's actually I remember one particular time it was just so intense, and I didn't really know what to do or who to turn to, and ended up getting some of the going to the free counseling service that the college offered, and having just a beautiful experience with this lady who was just there to listen to me express my thoughts
Mm.
and and just join with me and try to help me, as best she could. And she introduced me and inspired me to start meditating. And I would go off and drive outside of the town, and just sit in my car and meditate. And I would just feel like so excited and about this totally new realm that I was opening up to. And yeah, so I would say that actually stands out the most. That relationship with that counselor as something that really inspired me towards something along those lines of looking deeper into the mind.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And we might be we might be jumping excuse me, we might be jumping forward a little bit, but could you just sort of tell us a little bit around? I know that there was a period where you were um, based at the Kalani Retreat Center in Hawaii, and it was there that you met David Hoffmeister. Could you just kind of pick up your story or the parable of Jason Press from sort of around that time, and just um, having met David, kind of the impact he had on you? And I think when we spoke about this once before, I got the feeling that there was just this sense of like David was somehow symbolic of like a deepening in your own calling, and you really felt drawn to to be around him more. And I think you then made the move over to Utah. But could you just sort of describe anything around that that feels inspiring for you to share, JP? Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, so that's jumping maybe 4 or 5 years forward. I was 24 when I was at Kalani, which um, was a hugely transformational time for me because I just left my life and my familiar environment in New York and decided to just do something completely different. Um, and I was collecting unemployment at the time through New York State, and I just continued to collect it even while I was there in Hawaii. I just went to this. I I kind of just happened upon this retreat center in a book, a gigantic book, which had a whole bunch of different options in there, and I was looking for something just like it. And it's kind of the thing where you pay to volunteer, you work a certain amount of hours each week in a certain field. I was in the kitchen helping out, and you just get to be around people who are open and exploring, just as I was. Um, and it certainly has a huge emphasis on spirituality and yoga, this retreat center. So um, I went there and I just thought, I'm going to just open up as much as I can and let go of the old me, whatever that is, um, just come out of my shell and try things I've never tried before, um, and just try to be so open. That was my intention going there, and wow, it was a hugely powerful, profound experience. And
Mm.
it was just, I was there a total of 10 months, and it was just a whirlwind of just just checking it all out. I mean, it was the kind
Mm.
of place you could check it all out in terms of like the spiritual palette of options out there. I felt like I just got exposed to everything all at once, and got to try it all out, and felt what resonated, what didn't resonate. Um, and then I met a lot of wonderful people there that I'm still very much in touch with. But towards the end of my time there, I guess I reached a point where I felt like I wasn't really, it was like I had found a lot of things, but there was still something that maybe that I couldn't really have defined, but that I was still wanting to find and hadn't found. And so yeah, I feel like that thing was found when David Hoffmeister came and spoke and did a few days of these gatherings at the retreat center, and fortunately they were open to all the volunteers there, and um, my friend Joe actually recommended that I go and check this guy out.
Mhm.
And it was all lined up so perfectly. I happened to have these particular days off of work, um, and so I remember vividly going there and listening to this man speak, and really having no idea of what he was talking about, because the terminology he was using and the background he was coming from was pretty different from mine. Um, a lot of Christian words, and quite different from a lot of really what was going on at Kalani, actually, which was a lot of Eastern spirituality, yoga, and things like that. And so this felt like it felt quite different. And I have to say, I remember feeling like I didn't really understand it, and on one level, but on a deeper level, I just was watching, and I felt like this is what I was waiting for. Just that, just that. This is what I was waiting for, and this is the truth. That's all I could feel in my heart, was like, this is it. And so I've heard other people talk about the same kind of experiences. Something just happens and they just know, like, this is for me. And that was it for me. This is my calling. And I was so happy and so excited, and it was such a relief too, all of the seeking and the searching I had been doing, and just feeling like uh, that I had found the answer on such like a deep level, a knowing. It was just so exciting, such an exciting time. And so, really through him, I was introduced to A Course in Miracles, and that's what he was sharing a lot about. And so I immediately started studying the book, the course. Um, got involved with a small study group that was at Kalani, and just really dove right into it, and just kind of gave it everything I got and made it my main priority and my main focus throughout my days. Um, but like I said, that was towards the end of my time at Kalani. I think I was there maybe a month longer after meeting David. And David was only there for a few days, maybe a week. Um, and right before, I think it was the weekend before I was leaving Kalani, I was on maybe the 29th workbook lesson, God is in everything I see.
Mm.
And
Mm.
um, and I just I went out um, with a friend, did like a little camping trip, and was out in this kind of very remote valley practicing this lesson. And long story short, I had just an amazingly deep, mystical, revelatory experience where kind of everything um, collapsed in just a pinpoint of a moment. And it was like my whole world got turned inside out. And the depth of knowing that I had when I met David and felt like I had found the answer was nothing in comparison to this experience, which I felt actually changed my life and changed somehow like who I felt like I was, uh, and just shot me off in this whole different direction. So um, it was perfect for that to happen right as I was leaving Kalani and kind of going off into the unknown a little bit. I had some plans to travel with a girlfriend at the time. It was just the perfect thing that propelled me with a stronger sense of purpose and and drive than I've ever had before in my whole life. And I feel like it's still happening now, like it's carried through and never really faded away.
Mm.
Um, and so that was huge. I left Kalani, continued studying the course, um, and then about 6 months or so later, I went to I was studying the course, traveling around, and just uh, there were points where I was having quite a lot of difficulty with it. Didn't really have anyone to connect with about the ideas, and was really wanting to be around people that I could connect with, and who shared the same passion that I did. And so that's when I think I wrote to David and asked about coming to his Living Miracles Monastery in Utah, and I did that. I came to a retreat there, asked if I could stay on as a volunteer for a couple weeks, and they agreed as a trial period that I could stay on for a couple weeks, um, and then I just ended up staying, never leaving. I mean, it felt like a really good fit. I felt so happy there. It was just what I was looking for, and
Mm.
it was a time where there was certain things I seemed to be able to offer that fit really well, um, with the group that was there, and so it was just a perfect fit. It felt very, very divinely orchestrated, and so yeah, that's the Kalani story.
Oh, beautiful. Hmm. Yeah, I was just remembering a parable. I think our friend Lisa may have told me this, that it was about you, that it was kind of around the time, I guess, when you arrived at the monastery, and I think Lisa may have communicated with you that, something along the lines of, when volunteers arrive, it's natural that, doubts and fears and the darkness will come up. I mean, you mentioned the Course in Miracles, and that really is about, um, you know, going through the darkness to the light, or bringing the darkness to the light. And I remember one of the things that was mentioned. I think David even might have told this story too. That over a number of days that you would sort of keep coming to Lisa and saying, well, there doesn't seem to be anything coming up for me. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that, and because you mentioned a bit earlier there that depression had been a part of your life, and I'm just kind of, you also mentioned that deep revelatory experience. Now, had a lot of that depression, or some of those fears, had a lot of that been washed before you even entered the life at the monastery, or just tell us a bit about that? Yeah.
Hmm. I guess it had been washed, or at least it was completely out of my awareness at the time. Um, I felt just, in general, at that point in my life, I was just so high
Right.
and so excited. I mean, I, I couldn't have been living a more different life within the period of 1 year from how it was before. And all these changes and all the excitement, I was just so high. And um, and yeah, I met Lisa. Lisa was the one who interviewed me when I had a phone call to kind of apply as a volunteer and come to that retreat. And yeah, it was a beautiful connection with her. And when I was there at the monastery, I guess that high, that excitement,
Mm.
the depression was nowhere to be seen. It was completely vanished from my mind. In fact, everything, so much vanished. I had back pain at the time and different chronic things, that would kind of come and go, and issues with, you know, eating the right food and trying to eat healthy and everything. All this stuff just vanished from awareness. All I was wanting to do was just be at this monastery, study the course, and just kind of help out as much as I could and do whatever they needed help doing. And yeah, there was just a huge passion and a willingness and excitement. Um, and but I do remember having that experience. Like, I guess part of me certainly wanted to go through a process that it seemed was essential in order to become truly consistently happy and peaceful. I wanted to go through the process, and I wanted to go through it as fast as possible. And so there was a part of me that, when nothing really seemed intense or hard or dark enough, uh, that was judging against that as like, well, something's not quite right. Um, and I guess it's tied into this idea that you need to go through a certain amount of suffering in order, like no pain, no gain kind of a thing. I feel like that's a deeply embedded belief, and I would talk about that sometimes and be like, I just don't feel like I have anything coming up. So the fact that I had nothing coming up was the something that was coming up,
Right.
in a way, if you look at it that way. But I had beautiful um, kind of messages coming to me from the people around me that were telling me, just, you don't need to, you don't necessarily need to have, first of all, anything come up. If you're happy, you're just happy, and just be grateful. And so that was nice to hear. And then also the idea that when things are meant to come up, then they will, and it'll be just the right timing in just the right way. And you can't really make that happen. Like, there's a line in the course about how you can't awaken yourself, but you can allow yourself to be awakened. So I would say my journey has been a lot of that, just letting go of that drive, that push to go through whatever needs to be gone through and just do this as fast as possible, and coming more into like an allowance, acceptance.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, JP, about you still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Just wanted to ask you about just the idea of trust and the idea of sort of letting go of attachments or expectations. And I think where the question's coming from, I recall just something so beautiful that you demonstrated to me and all of us at the silent retreat that was in Australia last year. You'd spoken a bit about how you'd been really looking forward to the experience, and how you had this knowing that it was going to be very deep and very profound, and then at the last minute you were actually called on to
mm,
step into a role that that was handling. I don't actually know what you were doing exactly, but it was a detailed role that basically meant that you weren't really going to be able to participate in the retreat as we all thought you were going to, and I just noted it was like you handled that without even a ripple. It was so beautiful. Could you talk to us? It doesn't necessarily have to be around that specific time, but just generally about how, as you've kind of gone through this mind training, what has enabled you to be so able to just roll with and let things be exactly as they are. Yeah, please, just anything around that would be great.
Hmm. Well, that's a good example to start with.
Mm,
And I don't know if I can say exactly
mm,
what it is or what it was, but I guess there has been a sense of just being able to release judgments more and more, and 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 that retreat and that experience of that particular project that occupied me almost 24/7. It felt like for pretty much maybe 75% of that retreat. Um, that was powerful, and I remember it certainly came as a surprise, um, maybe just a couple of days, or I don't know, not long before the retreat was starting, and I guess I felt like I had the choice to decide whether to resist it or to go with it. And I mean, in some ways, it's not really even a choice because there's no question of what's going to feel better to do. It's just as you're going with it, then um, I guess um, I remember feeling like I wanted to withhold any thoughts and conclusions about what it all meant and what it was all for as long as I possibly could, until either there's a real knowing or just for as long as I possibly could. Because I didn't know, certainly had expectations that I would be at this silent retreat participating in this very specific way.
mm,
And it looked completely different from what I thought it would look like in the end. And I did feel like that it was going to be a profound, deep experience, and it was, but it was totally different.
mm,
And I'm glad you mentioned that I had said that I leading up to it, that I had a feeling it was going to be a deep experience.
mm,
And just having that in mind, it's like there's no form element when you say you're going to have a deep experience. So there's no limit to how it's going to look, and
mm,
and I think that was really helpful. And I ended up having a lot of fun doing this particular project, sitting in the camper van there on my computer all day, and just, I mean, I felt so supported and like nestled in this vibe of 20 something people that is such a reverent space. And it's not like I was completely not a part of the retreat, but maybe for the most part, but I did get to come out here and there and join in a little bit here and there. Um, and it just felt so beautiful. And in fact, I realized afterwards that um, this particular project, which was actually going through just a huge amount of accounts and online websites and logins and updating all of the account information. Um, I actually there would have been no other way that I could have done it in any other way, um, because it just required such a full amount of attention and focus, and to have no other distractions, and to be able to be um, so just have nothing else that I was responsible for. because the Frances was leading the retreat, and we were kind of planning to lead it together, and she just said, I got it. You, and she just totally supported me to go and go and go with the flow, basically, and do my thing. And normally, outside of a retreat, there'd be a lot of other things going on, other requests that might come to me, communications. Um, but since everyone knew I was in a retreat, there wasn't any other requests, and I was able to just pour myself fully into this project. Um, and so somehow, like, seeing it that way in my mind, seeing the perfection of it, uh, I just had this sense like, oh, I may not know what it is completely, but I know there's something good about this, something deep at work, and I just want to let it play out and see what it's really about. Um, so that when you talk about letting things be as they are, letting go of expectations, what comes to mind is the thought that I first heard talked about specifically by David Hoffmeister when he talks about just letting yourself make no conclusions. And that was just one of those things that stuck in my mind. And I thought, I'm just really going to use that because it seemed very logical and practical to me. And I wanted to use it with everything. And I would say of all of the one-liners that have helped me throughout like the journey, that's been the biggest one. Just make no conclusions. Somehow it just really stuck in my mind. And I see how really that's the answer to any problem or any question, is that if you're making a conclusion about something, it's just a judgment in the mind and it's a limitation. And if you just can get to an authentic place to be able to let that go and just be more in the unknown state of mind where don't necessarily know or can conclude what anything is for or what anything's about, then there's a real freedom in that. And so yeah, that's been my way for the last couple of years. Really, that one line has been hugely impactful, helpful.
Thank you. Could you talk to us too around the idea of, I've heard you say this before, and it's the idea of simply doing what's given. You may have just mentioned it earlier, and it's something that it's an idea that does get used in these living miracles communities, particularly if someone might be going through stuff and they're kind of like their mind is tempted to kind of wander or dwell on something, or could you talk around maybe how that idea has been helpful for you, or even generally how that can be such a helpful idea just to keep the mind focused on on what is helpful, doing what is given and not doing extras as well.
Yeah, I like that. Um, well, I love that term, just the term given, and I use it all the time when I'm speaking, um, and it feels like another word for acceptance, um, and letting all things be exactly as they are, trusting that all things work together for good, all kind of tie into this idea that just what's given is given. What's showing up in front of me is not wrong. Like it's what's happening, and um, any resisting of what's happening in any way, going against what's given, um, just feels uncomfortable. Just it's unnatural because it's like saying this is what's happening, but I want it to be a different way.
Right.
And and so I guess there's just so many opportunities to practice that. Um, for as an example, just this summer, um, I would say I've probably been in the most spontaneous mode for myself that I've been in a long time, maybe ever. And just in terms of not knowing what the next steps are for me, not really having any kind of concrete idea of this is what I'm going to be doing next or this is where I'm going until it's happening pretty much, with a few exceptions. And and I like that. That's a real theme that's been coming into my mind, about just really accepting what's given and trusting it. And so that I've had a few different invitations to go different places and do different things over this summer. Um, and for one reason or another, it'll seem like, oh, there's a real possibility for this particular one, and then things will unfold and it won't be quite given, so to speak. And then something else
Mm.
will come along and say, oh, maybe this is happening. And it's fun to explore the ideas, but then it's not really given either. And and so for something to be given, I mean, I feel like when you're in this flow of just living your life, things just become obvious, and you don't
Mm.
have to try to make anything happen. I guess there's a letting go of personal preferences with that. You know, you need to be willing to just um, not even let go of what you think you want, but realize that you don't really know what you want,
Mm.
and and more, you know, trust the spirit, trust the what's unfolding in front of you, trust that whenever I've gone someplace in the past, it's been so obvious. It's been this is what's happening for whatever reason. Um, Either there's like a super strong invitation and there's the full support of everybody around me, and in my own mind I feel it so strongly and all the signs are there, and there's just a knowing, and that feels like we can experience that all the time with everything.
Mm.
And when that's not there, then I guess it takes just a self-honesty to admit that, okay, well, it's maybe it seems like it's partially there, but it's not completely there. And if you go with the partial, then like you're not really giving yourself what you're truly worthy of. I found it's much better to be patient and wait for things to be really obvious,
Mm.
and then they just are, and then they're happening before you know it, you're swept off in some different direction. And then at that point, usually you understand, oh, now I see why I couldn't have gone there or done that.
Mm.
So I'm kind of speaking a little bit, um, maybe conceptually, but
Mm.
does that make sense? That's
Yeah,
kind
it
of my
does.
experience this summer.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, it kind of leads me to want to ask you another question. Just around as you were speaking, I was getting this sense of just this kind of like quietening and going within and just like trusting that, okay, this doorway is opening. I'm walking through it. Oh, this one's not. Oh, this one doesn't. And just like really feeling it. I kind of want to ask you something that relates to that. It's just around, say, tuning in to, say, to the spirit as opposed to listening to the voice of the ego. Like, what forms has the spirit's voice come to you? Has it been in like a feeling quality, or is it an audible thing, or how would you kind of describe that?
Um, I would say ultimately it's a feeling thing.
Mm.
But first, it seems to come in all the forms, like every form possible. It could be through another person,
Mm.
or
Mm.
from a thought in my own mind, or from a movie, um, from a conversation, and but ultimately it always comes down to a feeling. Like I realize that even when you put your trust in seemingly in other people, um, whether it's temporary or whatever, you're really trusting yourself to put your trust in that other person. There's still, before you're putting your trust in the other person, there's a decision that you're making in your own mind saying that I'm choosing to trust here. And I feel like the forms, they're infinite, that it comes in all the forms, the voice of the spirit and the signs and the symbols to tell you like just what you need to know, what you need to hear. But ultimately it comes down to a feeling, and I feel like that's what's guided me. That's what guided me to Kalani, and that's what guided me to the monastery. There'd
Mm.
just be this feeling
Mm.
and this inner knowing that maybe it's not even so conscious necessarily, but it just moves you, and it's that's how we all live our lives. Just there's maybe different degrees of awareness of that,
Mm.
um, but yeah, I came to that realization like there's always yeah, at the core it's just an inner
Mm.
feeling. I can't say I've ever heard like an audible voice in my mind speaking to me, but I have like the stream of thoughts that flow through the mind. Sometimes they're really resonant, beautiful, loving thoughts, and I just
Mm.
feel like that's the spirit, and
Mm.
you just feel it.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. Mm. I want to just talk about relationships, and I remember you saying to me once when we were in Hawaii together that relationships was an area for you that if anything was going to bring things up, it seemed like it was the area around relationships. And
Mm.
you also spoke about the first trip you made to Australia and how I think you used the words that that was a particularly healing time for you. I was wondering if you could just talk a bit about relationships, if there's anything specific comes in around the Australian trip and how, the sort of healing that occurred for you. Yeah, just share anything around that, and even how those experiences have helped you you know, to reach the level of consistent peace that you're in today. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, that trip to Australia was very powerful in 2011, 2012.
Mm.
And I'm very grateful to say, actually, just recently, I feel like I've been given a new perspective on that, or a little bit more of a deeper understanding of
Mm.
what that was. Because I would say, um, since maybe the Kalani experience, maybe that Australia experience was maybe my most deep, transformational, um, kind of intense experience, but intense in a number of different ways. It would be hard to describe it all without taking quite a lot of time actually, because
Mm.
it was just epic. It was a huge experience. But the way it began was just a deep, open-hearted experience, um, and probably the deepest I've ever had in my life. And uh, it was just like all this love was in my awareness and pouring through me, and and it was just glorious. I felt, and with that love, I felt so clear. Like there was just a clarity, and like my mind felt so pristine and high, and and yeah, it might not be, and not so easy to describe in words
Mm.
even, um, but this new perspective I've been given is that, having had that experience, that somehow it was like giving my myself, or maybe what was unconscious, was giving it permission, saying like, okay, there's a real safety here and a stability and a clarity. And it's like the higher my mind went, maybe the more I could allow, the, the greater depth I could allow up into awareness following that. Um, and so I think that's kind of how it goes and how it happened for me, because kind of after, or even partly combined with that high heart opening experience, was a lot of intensity, a lot of confusion and emotions just seemingly coming out of nowhere. I've never really cried so much in my life.
Mm.
I never cried, period, so much in my life, but um, I just had a lot of tears that were just not understood in the moment. It was just like, it felt like raw emotion,
Mm.
just somehow being allowed to be released and feeling like
Mm.
I was in a very safe place
Mm.
to be able to do so. I mean, I felt so supported, just the group of friends I was with down there, and just everything about it. I never felt so supported. And so it all kind of played out together to allow me to face something. And that's actually when I feel like this is also part of this new perspective, that I feel like that was part of me allowing that maybe life pattern of depression to come
Mm.
into awareness, to really be healed,
Mm.
like fully. Like I mentioned before, when I first came to the monastery, maybe that was not an awareness, but if there was ever a healing of that at the core, I feel like that was it. And so it kind of rocked me
Mm.
and humbled me, but it affected me deeply,
Mm.
and to this day. And yeah, it's one of the most profound experiences I've had.
Mm. Mm. That's beautiful. Mm. You kind of touched on this in your response just then, but I wonder if you could, if anything else, you feel to share around the idea of how helpful it's been for you to be part of this community experience, over these years, in terms of like facing and undoing um, things there that just that just needed to be let go of, like how how that was made, you know, um, easier, I guess, having the community support around you and these mighty companions. There's a point in the Course in Miracles where Jesus says that, on this journey we reach a certain point where we will not go on from here alone. Like we will have the support of mighty companions, and it sounds like what you're describing is that you've kind of experienced that. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think it's so deep.
Mm.
We use that word from the Course, that term mighty companions, and
Mm.
sometimes it's used very lovingly and very lightly,
Mm.
but really it's really deep. I mean, when you really understand what that means, I think, and see the people around you as they really are, this term mighty companions, it almost brings me to tears, just because the support um, and the love that surrounds you is unbelievable. And I mean, it's almost like not to be taken lightly, and to recognize that
Mm.
is wonderful. It's just wonderful to be able to see that, and and feel so grateful for it. And then when you really see that, you just want to be able to then offer it in turn. And and I don't know if I've recognized that, to its fullest extent,
Mm.
the term mighty companions, but to some extent, I've just come to this realization that it's really deep. It's like what this is all really about, the journey of awakening, is it's beyond words, and it's beyond what can be conceptualized, and
mm,
can only be experienced, and having those experiences of that bring you anywhere close to, like, to seeing the truth, and the depth, like the truth of reality, then it just kind of leaves you speechless, I guess.
mm, mm,
So I love thinking back about that time in Australia, and just all the different people I met, places I've lived, and
mm,
how just you get swept up in the vibe of those around you. And when you're
mm,
surrounded by people that, are generally extremely happy and positive and loving, and it's just oh, someone's at the door here. Oh,
mm,
okay, they left. Um,
mm,
well, it's amazing, and
mm,
and
mm,
yeah, mighty companions. Yeah, it's a good term.
mm. This question really just flows on from there, and you may not have too much more to add because it sort of feels like it does totally tie in with the idea of mighty companions. But from what I recall, it was 3 years ago you joined Messengers of Peace, and just wanted to ask you what that symbol means to you. Yeah, and um, yeah, what does it mean to you, and how helpful has that symbol, Messenger of Peace, been for you? Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm,
Yeah, that symbol, the way I've looked at it has changed a lot. Has Yeah, it's changed quite a lot
mm,
in a number of ways, and then changed again and again. Um, at one point, I remember thinking, messengers, it has the word mess in it. It's like for those who really have a mess. Like I felt like there was a mess in my mind and it needed to be straightened out, and so I became a messenger of peace. And it was like just joining in this group, some I'm making a I needed to make a pretty firm commitment in order to, like, get straightened out. And that's really, I think, there's a at the core of it, of the messenger of peace symbol, is there's a commitment there that you're going to stick with this, whatever this is, and however it looks, and not turn away, trust that it's the path. And and I think that's what excited me about it in the first place, was just this. It felt like the biggest commitment I could make in this life, um, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to experience what that would feel like. But I don't know. The symbol has changed also, in that it's faded from what it used to mean. At first, it kind of had a very worldly feeling, in terms of, like, these are people who, messengers of peace are people who are more peaceful, and they're more spiritual, and so they're better. It's good. Like, if you want to be a better person, then you become a messenger of peace. That was pretty much how it was in my mind. So there was a strong motivation to become that for that reason. Um, Although I do have the thought at the same time that the spirit uses egoic motivations, um, and uses whatever the attraction is to pull you in closer to itself, and how anything in this world can be used by the spirit. I think that it was used, and stepping into that symbol, becoming a messenger of peace, and making this commitment, I feel also allowed me to feel I was in a stable enough place, and just committed enough, that I wasn't going to leave, so I could allow myself to face whatever needed to be faced. Um, without constantly thinking, oh, should I stay or should I go? It was like, I'm staying, period. So now whatever healing needs to happen, then it's just going to happen. And that was really good. So, but now I see it's faded in the sense that I don't see that same um, difference in messenger or non-messenger. In fact, at one point, all the messengers got together and decided to get rid of the symbol entirely for that reason, just because, you know, don't want the ego using a symbol, any symbol, to keep anyone separate or anything separate. Um, and it's still used sometimes as it's helpful because, I mean, ultimately, if you're letting a symbol go, then you're just because it seems to be um, a device for separation. Um, Still, I mean, there's going to be other symbols that'll come up and get used in its place for separation. It's not the symbol that's the problem; it's the thought underneath it. And so, I think that's what I've been taking into my mind, and really having a prayer to not see differences, to see everyone as messengers of peace. And I feel like that prayer is getting answered because I don't have those same thoughts anymore, and I feel like um, my one desire is just to feel connected with whoever it is I'm around, and symbols don't really have a part in that. I mean, those types of titles, I mean, in terms of symbols, like titles don't really have a part in feeling connected with those that are in front of you. So it's faded in that sense. But I like it as a symbol of, you know, just ones who have decided to go for God and collaborate and support each other. And so in that sense, I see everyone as a messenger of peace because we're all, whether we know it or not, we're all supporting each other in some way. And so yeah, that's at this point in time, that's where it's at in my mind. That symbol. A lot of thoughts around that over the years, though.
Just hearing the idea of judgment coming in, and you sort of touched on it earlier, and I just one sense I get, excuse me, it's like I can't even recall anyone ever saying anything critical or judgmental of you, and I sort of I was looking at that in my mind, just that idea, and it sort of struck me, well, if it may well be that your mind has become just so free of judgments and attack thoughts that they don't get kind of reflected back. But I don't know. I just wondered if you could kind of like sort of just talk around the area of judgments, because it feels like it's a really, I mean, it's a massive area in terms of healing the mind. In fact, I think when Jesus talks about the different steps that we kind of go through, he says that the almost like the penultimate step, he says is it has to do with really relinquishing the judgments that we've placed on our brothers, on everything really. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little around that, and how has there been something in particular that you've used that has helped you to release judgments, in terms of maybe a lesson from the course or something? I know you mentioned that course idea earlier about not drawing conclusions that you found particularly helpful. Is there something that you found helpful in relation to releasing judgments or attack thoughts? I get the feeling with you now that it's maybe just something that's kind of just automatic, that your mind is just in this kind of like, is activated in terms of just being in a forgiving flow. So it might not be relevant now, but yeah, just any thoughts around that, JP?
Well, I guess generally speaking, um, when you get more and more sensitive to what's happening in the mind, those judgments start to become more obvious and feel more and more uncomfortable when you're holding on to them. That might have been unconscious before or not fully in awareness. And when you have more of a focus on allowing them into awareness, then um, there's not even like an active element, I would say, that um, pinpoints them and releases them in my mind. That says, "Oh, I found this judgment. Now I want to release it, so I'm going to, meditate on that and release it." It's more like um, just seeing how uncomfortable it is to hold on to them. Then they're just automatically released because they're seen as they just don't feel good. So generally speaking, that's what I would say about that. I mean, it's beautiful how you see me, and I think that it's a beautiful reflection of your mind just to see me that way. That there's no judgments on me. It's like, that's I've had that same experience seeing people, just in this light, and that's how we want to see people. We want to see people happy and loved. It's like, because that's what we want for ourselves too. I mean, I guess there's something in it too about um, seeing that when you're judging someone else, that you're really just judging yourself. Um, yeah, there's something about that too. That feels important. Even even in the sense that you just that it's a feeling. Like you might have a judgment about another person, and it doesn't affect them at all, but it affects you. And so no matter how hard you believe in it, or how much you want it to be right and the other person to be wrong, ultimately it's never the other person's problem. It's only my problem. And I think that's part important to recognize too.
Another this thing I see in you is this. It's like I think in the course, I think it's under a section called the Holy Spirit's Lessons, and he starts by saying, to give all. Is it? Give all to all, and I just get this feeling with you that it's like you're just in such a giving flow. Like it's like your life is really a demonstration of being in service, and being in full service, and really this. I just get this sense of this deep desire to be truly helpful. And could you talk to us about being in that giving flow and being in service, and how helpful that is? Because it's really, I just get this feeling that's kind of the key, because the ego is really about trying to coming from a sense of lack and trying to, fill this sense of lack. But I just see with you that it's like this just continual desire and demonstration of help and of giving, and of even going that extra mile, just being so humble in the giving as well. So yeah, could you just talk a little around that?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I think that's so key. That's been a huge training for me, I think. Um, and I could think of so many times when, I do a lot of computer work and websites and things like that. So I'll get certain requests, maybe through emails or technical requests that come in, and you never know when they're going to come or how big the project's going to be or how small the request is. And for the first while, there was maybe like a sense of a um, not always feeling like in that fully available, fully giving mode. Sometimes I would be, sometimes other times I might feel like, oh, I wish that had come at a different time, or I wish that maybe I just wish that it hadn't come, that particular request or that email. And at some point, I just felt like I don't like the way that feels to have those thoughts.
Mm.
I'm just going to try. I remember, I think it was one of the periods when I was in Hawaii. I just felt like I wanted to experiment with like radically changing that outlook. And whatever request it was, um, just make myself as available as possible for that request. And that doesn't even necessarily mean that I'm going to or to handle that particular request, but it means that I'm going to give myself over and be completely present with it and respond in whatever way feels given once I've really taken it to prayer. And sometimes that might mean, there's actually I have this and this happening, and so I might not be able to get to this right now. Um, but it was more of a sense of like really joining with the person that was sending the request, and that was what really made a huge difference. That all of a sudden started to feel really good, and then I just wanted to join in the mind, like meaning like feel connected with whoever it was sending the request.
Mm.
Sometimes the requests, sometimes they seem kind of like harsh, like just, you got to do this right now. This
Mm.
is urgent. And sometimes that would be a little bit shocking. But even then, it's like
Mm.
I would want to just take it to prayer, and if I could get into it right away, then I'd just go for it, and just not always give the other person the benefit of the doubt, and not necessarily assume that they have any kind of you can, it's easy to read things into emails, read a tone into it. Um, but I like to just always give people the benefit of the doubt, and just, I really want to help as much as I can. And, and really that's the only thing that ended up feeling consistently good, to have that mindset and to be able to trust that, because there's always a time element in there too, of thinking that I might just not have time to do it all, or I might get overwhelmed, or this might happen or that might happen. Um, and that seemed to have faded too, because that just never really seemed to happen. It never really did seem to get overloaded in any way. And whenever there was some huge thing that needed to get handled, like that project in Australia
Mm.
during the retreat, then the time and the spaciousness was given in an
Mm.
amazing way. And so I've been having a lot of fun just
Mm.
kind of still experimenting with that idea. And yeah, it feels really good.
Mm. That's great. So would you say, like it just feels like your life, there's um, like it, yeah, just there's like a flow to it, and a grace. Do you have these days? Do you have resistances that still come up, or fears? Is there anything, yeah, anything around that that you kind of feel to share, or does it feel like that on the whole your mind is just in a consistently peaceful state, JP? Hmm.
Well, I guess when I hear that question, I automatically just think of times where I have faced a lot of intensity or instability
Mm.
emotion, and I haven't felt like that in a while. Like there
Mm.
seems to be some stability there that didn't seem to have been there before. Um, Maybe the fluctuations are there to a much lesser degree,
Mm.
but at the same time, I wouldn't really want to say that
Mm.
what might happen tomorrow. Who knows?
Mm.
And if I put myself in a box and say, I'm stable, I'm
Mm.
just stable now, and I can say that for the moment, yeah, and I feel good about saying that. But um, as far as anything else, you really can't. I mean, that's almost like another conclusion that could be drawn, or
Right.
that could be a temptation to draw a conclusion like that. And um, it just feels easier not to put myself in any boxes
Mm.
or try to maintain any kind of way of being, but just yeah, but definitely feeling grateful for the stability that seems to be there now.
Mm.
And I mean, I just remember when I was at the monastery with Lisa in those first beginning months, how often she would talk about being authentic, and I really liked that.
Mm.
I really liked that, and I didn't really know what that meant. I could see how authentic she was, and I appreciated that. And I thought at first I thought, oh, I want to be like that, or I want to be like someone who I think is authentic.
Mm.
And then I'd start maybe taking on certain traits that they might have, thinking that that's the way to go. Um, but I can
Mm.
feel like there has been a deeper authenticity of of myself that has come out, and a more of an acceptance with that, or feeling like certain parts that I might have judged to be wrong about me, like inherent things that I don't seem to be able to change, no matter how hard I try. I don't really have those thoughts quite as much anymore.
Mm.
And there's like, okay, this is just the way, this is the way I am now. This is the way things seem to be. And I never really was responsible for the changes that seem to happen in the first place. So trying to change anything is kind of like a misuse of energy.
Mm.
So does that kind of answer your question?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it does. Thank you. Mm. So, do you have any? Are there any immediate travel or touring plans for you? I actually heard a whisper the other day from someone that you were going to be spending some time in Australia again. Can you tell us if that's if that's true, or if there's any travel plans, or does it look as though you're going to be based in Utah for the immediate future?
I do have a travel plan. Um, Amongst the many options that have been like swirling around over the last couple of months, one has seemed to fall into place. It's not Australia, um, but the thing is with the other options, it's like I'm still open to all of those too, and you never know how things play out in terms of timing. And but right now, there's no definite plans for Australia. Although I was looking into that at one point, and it feels it feels like it could be a fun thing that might happen again someday. I've had such amazing experiences down there. But right now, in less than a week, the 20th, 6 days from now, I'll be going to New York, back to where I grew up. I haven't been there in probably, I don't know, actually 3 or 4 years. Um, I've just got, well, I've always had, but now I'm kind of responding to a very warm invitation from my parents, who have just said, anytime you want to come back, we'll fly you over and just take care of you, and just let you can be here and rest. And just felt like a really loving, nurturing invitation. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna go there soon and just see what that's about. But it feels kind of exciting. It feels like there's something fresh about it. And I have a beautiful relationship with my parents, actually. Over the years, it's also something that's changed a lot and transformed in different ways. But we get into these very deep talks, and they've been very supportive about everything I'm doing. They've come out to visit. They've come to the monastery and come out to visit me in different times. And so it's like going back there to see some sweet friends, and then just see what happens.
Sounds great. So you're off next week, you said.
Off next week. Yeah.
Wow. Oh. Well, I just want to thank you for your time and, just really for you and for your devotion and, it's just so felt. And I know for me, you've just been such a help in so many ways. And much of it's been through through what you demonstrate, just the quiet, humble, just beautiful way you go about everything. And it's just been a joy to spend this time with you. So thank you so much, JP.
Ditto. Thanks, Colin. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a real treat. Really appreciate it.
All right, you enjoy your time with your parents, and we'll
Thank you.
we'll talk when we next talk. I love you.
Okay, sounds good. Love you too.
Bye, JP.
Bye.